traffic. So I think even though we left the hotel at 7:30 in the morning, so we spent like 2 hours on the road, and because it was quite an adventure for Tuesday morning, because we went on 2 different cabs. Even though we have the GPS on, we spoke to the concierge who took the cab for us, and despite all this, we still ended up in the wrong place. And the first driver refused to get us here because he said he's running on very low gas. So we have to get on the second cab. And we get on the second cab, he still brought us to a different place. And after some SOS, and we finally made our way here. So Trevor and myself sincerely apologize. I know time is important for everyone, just like threat intelligence, right? So timeliness is of essence. So we do sincerely apologize for the held up, but I hope that this morning will be something interesting for everyone in one form or another. I try not to do too technical. There are 2 parts to this morning's session. So this is the brief agenda that I have set it up or prepared for this morning. First is not too technical, just to share with everyone on how we view threat intelligence and how is our approach to threat intel in today's context. And after the break, I will have 2 demos. The first part of the demo is just to illustrate how we use or how we approach threat intelligence in today's context. And that one is a bit technical because it involves sending data into the system and what does the automation and all the others magic take place behind the scene. And the second part of the demo will be, let's take a look at what is the current cyber landscape in Thailand based on what are some of the open source, private source or commercial sources that is reporting against Thailand. And maybe from then or even throughout the whole duration, if you have any questions, or any comments, feel free to raise your hand. I will try my best to answer. Yeah. So without further ado, I will keep the slides as short. So a brief intro about Arctic Security. We are a Finnish-based startup. So we are currently about 2 years old, still in seeding. But the technology itself has been around for quite a while. We have been working with national agencies, defense, since 2007. And in fact, our first product was in 2011. Back then, we were known as Abuse SA. Has anyone heard of Abuse SA? No? That's good. So whatever I say, it will be new to you. That's good. So we do have offices globally. In Singapore, covering APAC. So Trevor and myself looks after the region. We also have offices in Helsinki, and Oulu is our HQ. Do you know where Oulu is? No. I know it's in Finland, but any idea where Oulu or what Oulu is famous for? Nokia. So all the Nokia back then, 15 years ago, all the R&D development, so they employed like 8,000 employees just in that small little town back then. But now it has converted to like a mini Silicon Valley. So there are a lot of interesting development, in particular cybersecurity as well. So a lot of interesting brain in that city. So for us, we have a pretty simple mission. It's to provide a means for those who know to those that needs to know. Okay, so that is our mission. Simple as it seems. In fact, it's really simple. After that, when you look at the data, then you will realize that way. So earlier I talked about we have quite a number of references, but we are hoping that we can replicate some of those experiences that we have to this part of the region and maybe in Thailand itself. So quick show of hand, is anyone representing the government or the regulator space? Anyone? No one? Or too shy to raise up your hand? Okay. If it is PII, I can understand, right? But nevertheless, we hope that from this session, if you are in a position to help the community, to help your industry, or to help your fellow industry peers, not just competitors, but if it is something that within your control, within your power, let's do something today or in days to come on how we can have a cleaner internet or cyberspace for everyone. So a little bit about myself. I started off as a networking engineer and have progressed myself, involved with quite a number of turnkey projects in the region. I do travel quite extensively, but in the last 6 years or so, my focus has been on application security side. That was back in the days where people are still very skeptical about vulnerability scanning that time. And when we talk about pen testing, doesn't have to be on site. Nobody buys the idea, right? So that was when I started in cybersecurity. And in late, cyber intelligence is one area that I'm spending quite a fair bit in terms of looking at what are some of the new data that has been published by non-profit organization or commercial organization. And open source is something that we embrace a lot because the movement is something that is going to benefit everyone. But if we going to translate this into practice, then the other concerns about processes and support issues, technology, people, all this will come into the picture. But nevertheless, that's a quick intro about me. So this morning, these are the 3 value propositions that I want to start with. So if today someone were to tell you, hey, there is a machine in your network that is calling out to C2, would you like to be informed? Anyone doesn't like to be informed? Raise up your hand. So obviously all wants to be informed, right? So secondly, if we talk about, hey, you have a vulnerable service or a vulnerability that is advertising from your assets. Your assets may not be just your gateway IP. I want to extend this beyond your infrastructure assets, like your IP, domain, or website. Think about your suppliers. Who is supporting your businesses in the region, right? So unless you have a fully functional HR, most likely you are leveraging on HR resources, headhunting companies. So those could be like an extension of your business, right? And if you think of this beyond just HR, just finance, IT support, projects, etc., etc. So if there are badness reported against them, which may indirectly leads to you, would you like to be informed? No, please raise up your hand. Don't have, right? So you also like to be informed. And the last one, malicious activities. So if let's say it is not a simple botnet or malware infection, it could be like, hey, you have this particular machine coming, doing public internet scanning, and it has been picked up by intelligence sources. So is this behavior normal? So unless you are doing auditing, pen testing, so once a while you might see some IP originating from your network doing public scanning. But it should not be doing public scanning every other day, correct? And if let's say it is in your hosting provider environment and is doing public scanning all the time, would this be a concern to you, right? So it's quite difficult to say no to all this, but the challenge when we talk about threat intelligence is pretty complicated. And depending on maturity and who do you talk to, in which level and your experience, you have different response. So I want to start off with the good ones because security is always about fear and the bad things. Or if you don't do this, something bad will happen, blah, blah, blah. So I like to start off with good. And this next couple of slides, it's taken from 2019 Cyber Threat Intelligence Survey that was conducted by SANS, right? So the US entity. So the first good thing, diversification. So if we compare threat intelligence 3 years ago, there's a big diversification in terms of adoption, usage, etc. So in the past, or in fact now, most are still talking about IR, SOC analysts leveraging on intelligence. But based on the study, we are also seeing other teams or departments within the organizations that are benefiting from threat intelligence. Teams like risk and compliance, that's one. Second, you have IT teams, IT operators. IT operators including your network infrastructure guy, your sysadmin guy, your desktop support. So they are also leveraging on intelligence to help them prioritize the activity on the ground itself. So, which is a good thing, and which is a good business. That's why we are there, we are here sharing with you guys. And hopefully, yeah, can gain something out of it. The second good thing about threat intelligence in today's context is that it's getting more and more management support, C-suite support. So if today, quick show of hands, who is not using threat intel in their environment? Anyone that is not using? So everyone is using? Good? Good? Okay. Yeah, so that is a positive sign. And in fact, 33% now have executive support. So like 1 in 3, if today you're going to ask budget to spend on threat intelligence, chances are you're going to get it. It's just a question of how much. And this is a good thing. So that means, in my opinion, is that beyond the day-to-day cybersecurity, people start to value things that outside of cybersecurity. That means, what do outsiders see my organization, right? So that is a very positive sign. And of course, with the management support adoption is increasing. So in 2018 itself, so there's an increase of 12% over last year. And in fact, 81% have responded positively that it improves their cybersecurity. And it's not hard to see why. Because of all the things or hard work that people has done, collected, and how to use it in practice is the challenge. And the last good note is sharing. So earlier I talked about open source community. There's a lot of public feeds and people are sharing. But this is still very community driven. If let's say we can get something going in Thailand, for example, maybe some ISEC group. I know the banking ISEC is already coming together and they are sharing the intelligence within the bank. So if we could just replicate these initiatives to the other sectors, and on top of it, we do exchange between sectors. So how nice would that be when we start to share all this information with one another for the betterment of the internet itself, right? So sharing is definitely there. So if you are not exposed or access to those kind of platform, I strongly encourage you to do so. If maybe in the second part from the demo itself, you can hopefully it can help you to visualize some of the ways that you can use those information in practice itself. Okay, so I've talked about the good points. So what are the bad ones? There are still bad ones, right? Obviously, so what are the bad? Time consuming. In these 4 bullet points, if I were to ask, out of these 4 bullet points, threat or vendor reports, blogs, social media, forum, chats, deep web, dark web, news articles, analyst reports. If I were to ask, what would be the lowest form of denominator that can help you in your cybersecurity? What would that be? Anyone want to attempt? What would be the lowest form of denominator? APT 28? Is this the lowest form of denominator? Do you understand my question? Okay, just to be sure. Fancy bear? Yellow bear? No? Nobody? IP addresses? I have one hand. That's good. Domain names? Well done. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your participation. Round of applause, please. Yeah. So, seriously, when we look at threat intelligence and all the indicators that's available out there, and what do you actually need to help protect yourself, is actually just IP and domain names. Instead of all this. But I do not discount all this because it has its play when we talk about information sharing, marketing, getting people aware of certain activities or things happening on the ground. But if let's say we can take the lowest form denominator and automate all those data points that can be automated, so wouldn't that be great? Which leads me to the second challenge when we talk about using threat intelligence, which is automation. So how many are not doing SOC today or manage security services today? Not doing. So all doing, right? Excellent. So I would imagine, correct me if I'm wrong. So today, if we talk about what would be your starting point to use threat intelligence? So typically it would be an alert or notification that pops up in your CM, in your ticketing. Then you start to investigate. You go and look up with threat intelligence and see who reported and where else is it reported, and look at all the other analysis and maybe help you to resolve in your incident response. Is that the correct workflow you have described? Okay. So this is the typical workflow or usage of threat intels today. So, which is highly manual. And today, when we talk about any SOC with a team of 7 to 8 per shift, you can probably handle about 60 to 80 tickets at any one shift, and that's about max. And most likely, you will have more than 8 alerts at any one time. So without automation, you can't keep up. Second is there's a lot of duplication and false positive. How do I illustrate this? Is that if you are getting a particular source, if there is no way to dedupe, so chances are you will get update like almost every hour, maybe 6 hours, 12 hours, unless you have some algorithm to go and reduce the noise. Otherwise, you're going to get that. Second thing about false positive is whether the least common denominator, is it online or offline? We have encountered fellow peers where they talk about, oh, I have this X million number of records in my repository. It's going to give you wealth of data. But the question is, out of these millions and billions records, how many of them are online? Is current? Let's say for the last 24 hours. If we look at what is the landscape, people hop quite frequently. When we say people, I'm referring to criminal infrastructure. So when we look at criminal infrastructure assets, they move across network very quickly, and sometimes it's random. And unless there's a way to keep track, most of the time you're going to go on a wild goose chase, and that's why you are hit with a lot of false positive. And especially if you tap onto open source and you have no way to validate the open source quality, that's where you will get a lot of those roadblocks. The third challenge is information sources are not uniform, and they come in different formats. If I were to throw a stone out on the internet and look at all the intelligence sources, I will get formats like CSV, text, XML, JSON, sticks, taxi, etc., etc., etc. Depending on which era you are in, you will have other standards formats to deal with. And there's no simple solution today that can help to address this without spending a huge sum of money. So that is the second challenge today. And the last one is timeliness and accuracy, which I've illustrated a little bit before on the previous point. So lacking of context is another big challenge. If I take IP in itself, a domain in itself. It has no context. First, I don't know who owns it. I don't know where it originates from. But if let's say now, every IP or domain that goes through the system, I can tell you where are they from, who they belongs to, who owns it, when was the last online, and which sector does it belong to, which affected organization are they belong to. And we do this for every single data that goes into the system. Would this be something benefit to you? Second is, of course, talking about the identification and removing of IOCs, expired IOCs, which is the dedupe part. So expired IOC is also another challenge. How do you keep track? And in most of the, or should I say some of the other intelligence or analyst platform kind of system, tracking of IOCs is something that is not easily visualized per se. So while they can give you the kind of pivoting and mapping, but if let's say I want to find out when is the first contact established, when was the first payload delivered, what is the pattern over the past month? It'll be interesting for you to see if a machine is online Monday to Friday, Saturday, Sunday is offline. And then Monday to Friday is online again, Saturday, Sunday is offline again. So you will realize that this machine belongs to a regular office worker, right? And then if let's say a machine that is offline for weekend, but not weekdays, so then you will have a different inference when we look at this kind of data points. So tracking of IOCs and accuracy is the other part of the badness today. And the last one is unfulfilled promise technologies. Things like AI, machine learning, etc. So we are constantly evaluating on our system. We do have some analytics in place, but our analytics is still focused on visualization, data visualization, and what do you infer out of it? It's still a human process. Because there is no single training data set in security today that say that, okay, if you run your algorithm against this data set, your machine learning is there. It's different from facial recognition or photo or images, where there is a training data set. There's 5 million images produced by Google. You run your algorithm, so there is a score. But in today's context, security, there is no training data set. So, and that is the feedback from a lot of the C-level people, whereby they invested in a lot of machine learning and AI, but they're not getting value out of it because you might be using Windows, others might be using Linux. So whatever the machine learning results that runs, that gives you Windows, may not be applicable to a Linux machine or a Mac system. Similarly, when we talk about security devices, there are so many hundreds of them. So it's just gonna be a wild goose chase again. So I've talked about the good, the bad, and what if now you have the capability to change all that? So what is this change? Categorize. First, I talk about categorizing. So right now, if every event that comes in, I categorize them into their respective threat type automatically. So you don't have to worry whether is this a CNC, a C2, a malware, brute force, etc. So every data that comes into the system will be categorized automatically. That means there is no reading required. There is minimum or no manual processing. Okay? So we do this for every single event or data that goes into the system. Second, when we talk about threat intelligence, it requires no logs, no sensor, no agents to be placed in your environment. That means we are relying on information that has been collected by third parties. Whether is it legally or illegally, if they are publishing, if you can get your hands on that, how can we leverage those information to help you in your defense posture? And the last one is, you can do all this with minimum or no technical expertise required. So I want you to do away with the thinking whereby if I buy threat intelligence today, I have to hire another people, I have another system to run it. So all this can do without. So would this be something interesting to you? Second, apart from categorizing, we sort the events or data for you again. When we talk about sorting, we put them into their respective buckets. Buckets in terms of which sector they belong to. At the bottom of the pie chart is some of the ISP in Thailand, but later on in the demo you will see more refined stakeholders in the result itself. But the point is, things are sorted automatically, reported against the stakeholders in the system. Second is, there's only a single format that you need to manage, whether is it for human or for machine. Because we have a unique approach of threat intel, because we are only looking at things that can be automated, that's first. Second is things that are actionable by people on the ground. That means you and I, sysadmin, your network admin, whoever can remove the badness in the internet today. And third, you have the ability to share the information in part or in whole. So you are not limited or constrained by the intelligence source, because now you own the capability. You are producing intelligence. So of course you have the right to share information in part or in whole. And the last thing that if you could change, so now you can tag and track events that is of relevance to you. So now no longer an IP is a stranger. IP becomes a friend. How does it become a friend? Because it has been categorized, it has been sorted, and it has been context. So context in the form of, in the top picture, we classify them based on what are their malware family, for example, based on malware infection, botnet drones. So we categorize what kind of malware families they belong to. So you can zoom in to that kind of literature, the technical description, look at similar hash value, and do your IR instead of trying to or go through the traditional process of malware analysis. Second, we can do custom labeling. Custom labeling meaning you can add tags or attributes that make more sense to you, which later we'll see in the demo. The last one is dedupe and accuracy. So in this middle picture, I can look at any interesting data points I want, and I can see when was it first established and what are the activities it goes out throughout the duration. So this is how you can look at things that has been persist. We probably don't need advanced persistent threat. Even basic persistent threat is good enough. And you can substitute all these IP with organizations, and you will see what is the challenge in the cybersecurity threat today. And the last one, why I pull out this picture is that dedupe and accuracy is one of the main challenge. So for us, when we talk about deduplication, if it is within feet, of course we will do it for you. But if I have more sources that report the same IP, I would like to know. So if this IP happens to be your asset, and I have 3 intelligence sources reporting this IP, this is something that you should prioritize versus maybe a 2 Intel source or maybe 1 Intel source. So a lot of times people ask me, I want to dedupe and remove false positive. But in our case, the more sources report against your asset, the better, right? It means that it's a confirmed finding, it's a confirmed kill, right? So that should be the first thing that you should react to and not ignore it, right? So in a nutshell, what we are trying to do is to really address the 3 badness of threat intelligence today by automating, categorizing, sorting for you so that you don't have to read, you don't have to spend a lot of time investigating. You can just react to the events that is just reported to you. So things that has been contextualized and made relevant so that, you can prioritize your activities. And the last one is actionable. We are focusing things on victim notification. That means if the intelligence is reported against you, you should know. If there are vulnerabilities that has been known in the internet against you, you should be reacting to that. And the last one is threat indicators. And with that, I have finished my slide portion. Any question? No? Good. Are we for a break now, or you want to continue? Break now? 15 minutes? Yeah, so let's go for a short 15-minute break. Then I can have some time to set up for my demo. Then after we come back from the break, there will be 2 parts of demo. My request is no photo taking, no videography during the demo session because these are highly sensitive data. I don't want to be liable for it, even though, okay. So I'll leave it at that. See you guys back in 10:30. Yeah, thanks.
พร้อมให้เราก้าวทันจงมุ่งมั่นให้เป็นวันของเราให้คนไทยได้ทำธุรกรรมค่ำเช้าอย่างปลอดภัยมั่นใจทุก เวลานาทีมันไปด้วยความหมายทุกสิ่งที่ทำน้อยใหญ่พัฒนาการทำเพื่อให้เศรษฐกิจไทยงาองอาจยั่งยืนพวกเราไม่หยุดคิดพวกเราไม่หยุดทำไม่ยอมเป็นผู้ต้านกล้าทำสิ่งใหม่รวมพลังศรัทธายึดมั่นในหัวใจพวกเราคือเอ็ดดาสร้างสะพานแข็งแรงเชื่อมทางไปข้างหน้าคือความหมายที่สื่อเชื่อมโยงโลกใบใหญ่ให้ใกล้เพียงปลายมือคือหน้าที่เอ็ดดา
พวกเราคือเอ็ดดา ETDA พวกเราคือเอ็ดดา